All right, here we go. Live episode 23 of the Grandsire podcast. Like I always say, very creative name for a very creative guy. Very excited about today's guest, Jim West, head coach at MMA Gold. What's going on, sir? How are you?
I couldn't be any better. Very blessed. Just kind of running around, getting ready for class here in about an hour or so. And lots of fights coming up. So just busy, having fun, enjoying myself.
Sounds good. And I see that to go along with the coaching, you become a podcaster recently, right? We see you with James Lynch, all the guests from your gym and all that good stuff. Like, seems you guys have got that going on.
Yeah, Victory Loves Company. Yeah, we launched that a little bit over a month now or so. We had been kind of kicking things around for a while and finally got things together. And now we're rolling with our podcast.
So what was it that made you guys want to start a podcast? Obviously, you guys were messing around. Quality looks good. You guys brought in a quality host and James Lynch and everything. Guests are good. Like you guys came out swinging for this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, James and I have known each other for quite some time. And we've kicked around different ideas, and this one kind of came up. But part of it is because I've been approached kind of a few different times now about doing some different types of things with some of the fights and kind of commentating on some of the fights and doing different things. So kind of thought, let's start with the podcast, kind of get things going, get things flowing. Yeah, we're rocking and rolling. So hopefully it continues to go. I think we have Chael on tomorrow. I got to check with our producer, but I think Chael Sonnen is our guest tomorrow, and that'll be a riot. I'm sure we'll talk about a bunch of shit. And we'll keep it fun tomorrow, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure with Chael Sonnen. I like how you just casually dropped the big guest, right? Like, oh, the only Chael Sonnen for the podcast. Like even the first one, you guys I believe came out Max Griffin and stuff. Like you guys are not messing around on this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, like I said, I'm very blessed, and James is one of those media guys. Is one of the best in the game. He's been around for quite some time, and our contact list is pretty up there. So we put kind of things together. We have an awesome producer, Amanda England, and she kind of goes out and timelines everything. And goes out and gets our guests and creates a format, does a bunch of stuff, and yeah. So it's going well. Very, very happy with it.
So why'd you guys choose James Lynch as kind of your media guy? Like, is it about knowing that you have a guy that you can trust, knowing that he's good in front of the camera? Like, what was it specifically that made you guys like, this is the guy that's gonna, keep things going?
Yeah, man. I mean, he's kind of one of those guys, kind of like yourself, where it's real easy to talk to. He doesn't really push too much bullshit. You know what I mean? And some of the fighters with certain higher names in the media outlet, they're kind of pushy and they ask fucked up questions, and it's kind of annoying. And James isn't one of those guys, and we've known each other for some time, so we had a good relationship. Kind of that trust was there, so it just made sense all around.
So it's got to be good for you and your fighters as well, right? Because that way you have like a good platform to bring them on, make sure they do some media, get their names out there, right? Like that's got to be a big benefit that maybe people don't talk about, but even for you, you can sort of make sure that they're doing some sort of media and, getting their name out there, getting some hype for the fight.
Yeah, especially those guys that are coming up, like Aspen Ladd, little huge brother, is getting ready to make his debut here at the end of March. So, like you said, a lot of these guys, they think fighting is just fighting, and obviously that's a big deal. But they have to learn to what it means to be a professional while you're an amateur, right? So you're prepared by the time you actually say those words and become a pro, that you're ready for media. You understand what it's like to travel. You understand all the aspects of what that means to become a professional. So it's a good avenue for a lot of those athletes that are not quite in Bellators or the UFCs or ONE FCs and those types of things, to be able to kind of put them on that platform, because it is a big platform to go on, and it's good for many reasons, right? Like, obviously the UFC athletes will get on and all that stuff, but it's great for those guys that are coming up, those regional pros, those amateurs that are becoming pros, etc., to kind of have that ability to learn what that part's all about too. So yeah, it's great.
So I have to ask, like, what time do you guys shoot the podcast? Because it seems every time, like every episode, there's always a comment about how early it is, right? Like we saw with Aspen Ladd, a bunch of people. It's always like, man, this is early.
Yeah,
How early is it?
It's rough. Yeah. So right now, and it depends on if I'm out of town for fights or something, right? So right now it's set for every Tuesday at 7 a.m. California time. So um, fortunately, many of our guests have been kind of that Midwest East Coast. So 7 a.m. For us, but it's 9 if it's like Midwest, and it's 10 a.m. if it's East Coast. So for them, it's not too early. It's for all of our West Coast viewers, that they're struggling. Like, man, 7 a.m. So we'll probably switch things up eventually, but right now it's set for 7 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday.
There we go. Who do you have that's currently preparing for fights? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I know you have so many athletes. Like, how many people are you helping prepare with their training camp and all that good stuff?
Let's see, fights coming up. So the 20th of March, Marion Reneau and Max Griffin. Um, so both of them, and then we just got booked another one, April 16th. We have Greg Milliard, who is making his Bellator debut. Greg Milliard's actually Jairzinho's cousin, and one of Jairzinho's grappling instructors. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and so Greg's making his Bellator debut April 16th. Andrea Lee May 15th. I'm sure Anthony Hernandez will be sometime after May, I would guess, and then Aspen will be in the summer. Um, so yeah, we're just kind of rolling along and doing our thing. Very happy. It's a good time. It's a fun time to be in the gym. Lots of stuff going on. Hopefully soon we'll have quite a few more international fighters getting kind of looks and things like that once we get kind of visas under control and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of been the hurdle right now with a lot of the international guys is with COVID. It's kind of screwed up a lot of stuff, and they have to have certain visas to be able to even get here. So once that kind of clears up, there'll probably be a lot more.
We'll have to assume COVID's made a lot of things complicated for you guys too, because you got to make sure no one catches it. I'm sure you're in Vegas all the time, quarantining. It must feel like, every single week. Like, it must have made everything, I don't want to say hell, but it's definitely complicated.
It's interesting to say the least. And one thing I'll say, it's actually kind of cool, is that the UFC, they rented out. It's a Marriott right off of in a non kind of crowded area. So it's kind of cool because the only people that are allowed in the hotel is the fighters, and then the corners, right, and then obviously security. So it's kind of nice for in that aspect when you're cutting weight and kind of just having to do fight week. It's much easier, than being in a big hotel if you're in Vegas and on the Strip where there's a lot of people kind of in and out. But it is different. You have to test at home. So like if we had fights next week, I would test at home this week, and then you'd fly in on a Tuesday. You'd test again. You're quarantined until Wednesday. Then you're kind of free, I guess you'd call it, for 2 days, Wednesday, Thursday. But really the only place you can go is to the Performance Institute. And then you're back Friday. You test again after weigh-ins, and then you're quarantined till fight time. Then you fight. You come back. You're quarantined in the hotel again. You jump on a flight and head home Sunday. So fight week is very different. Media is much less, of course. But I think probably all in all, I bet the fighters probably like it as far as the quietness behind it and being able to kind of just move around, because you essentially almost kind of have like a whole floor to yourself when you're at the host hotel. So it's cool in that aspect, I guess. But just so many tests. I think I've been tested probably close to 50 times at this point since May. So it's like, man, hopefully this stuff ends soon.
Well, it's got to be good for your peace of mind too. Like anytime, like like regular people, it's like you breathe a little bit harder going up the stairs, or you feel something in your throat. You're like, here's the COVID. But for you, it's like you know in real time, if you're
Yeah.
good or not.
I mean, I'm not going to get all political into it, is what my opinion of it is, but no, I'm not really worried about it anyway. It's just another respiratory virus. There's like 200 of them in the world anyway, so it is what it is, right? We're all in these times, so we just kind of have to kind of play by the rules.
So how's it been going in terms of, like, we know Marion got it, so she got, I believe, pushed back 2 weeks or something like that. Like, has that made it tough? Like, fights are getting shuffled all over the place, right? Like with the constant testing and everything, that's got to be complicated training wise too, especially with peaking and the weight cut and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying. Yeah, Anthony tested positive too. We were supposed to go to Abu Dhabi, and he tested positive, so we pushed it back right to February. Same with Marion. I mean, a lot of our guys have already had it and kind of been through it. So, yeah, but the UFC's been great because they're rebooking the fights, right? They're just basically, okay, they call, you're positive. I mean, Anthony Hernandez and I and our other coaches, Kelly and Unson and Elliot Kelly, my guy, who were all in Anthony's corner. we had all been training. Like we didn't even know. We were training that night, and all of a sudden the UFC calls our gym. They're like, "Hey, Anthony's positive." We're like, "Well, news to us." We were all negative, but he was positive, right? Um, so the UFC's been great as far as that goes, right? They're just, "Hey, you're positive. Hey, when do you want to? When do you think you can fight next?" And we kind of give them a date, and they're like, and they usually accommodate, and they try to keep us with the same opponent. So they're working with it too. I mean, we're all just kind of in it, right? We're just doing our best to play by the rules. So, but yeah, it does mess with a little bit, with the peaking and things like that, and kind of having to tone it back. And then, okay, if you're if you're depending on where you're at when you tested, like positive, how far you are down on your weight, like can we start eating a little bit more now, or so there is a little bit of adjustment.
So an example like Marion, for example, who's got the fight, was rebooked and all that good stuff. What kind of adjustments did you guys have to make in that one? Because it is a little bit complicated. Because I believe we did get pretty close to the fight. Like, how does her camp look now compared to how it was before?
We just kind of took a step back, right? Because Marion got it, then it got rebooked, and then Macy got hurt, then it got rebooked, right? So, you just kind of got to roll with the punches. We just pulled back, on how hard we were pushing, and kind of upped our food a little bit more to kind of balance things out, and then we just readjusted that way. So we're now 2 weeks away, so we'll push another few days. But we kind of stopped with like a lot of the real hard contact type stuff because it's not really necessary. We've been doing that for already long enough, so it's really just staying healthy, keeping our weight in check, being able to adjust our calories a little bit, yeah, and staying sharp. So I mean, it's frustrating, but you kind of know, right? You kind of expect like there's things that are going to happen during this weird time. So yeah, it's frustrating, it's annoying, but kind of is what it is.
So I have to ask, but in battle of the coaches, right? Who has the best hair out of the coaches? I feel like you would be part of that pound for pound list, right? It seems like every time we see your haircut's always
Fun,
looking pristine and everything.
fun fact is I actually cut my own hair because it's like
Wow.
I got tired of like okay, because I like my hair cut all the time and short
Yeah.
and kind of just tidy. So I'm like, you know what? Back in my college days, like my sophomore year in college, I was like, man, I can't afford getting $10 haircuts every like 2 days, right? So I was like, I went to Walmart, bought some clippers. Man, did I fuck up my hair bad for years. And then I'd throw on a hat, wait for it to grow back, and then I'd cut it again and try it again and do it. Now it's kind of like, man, I can cut my hair in like 5 minutes. I just use a mirror in front, and you use a mirror in back, and I use the clipper and the shaver and the hair and the scissors and stuff like that. So I'm kind of a OCD when it comes to that.
Wow, there we go. I figured you're just always in the barber shop. You're one of those guys that bring in the barber from out of town to fly in, but this is all
Uh,
done yourself.
yeah, I've been doing it myself now. God, like I said, since my sophomore year of college. So I'm not gonna age myself, but it was a while ago. Let's put it that way.
So how did you learn? Like, it couldn't have been just trial and error. Like, were you watching videos, like have someone explain it to you? Because fading sounds simple when people explain it, but when you actually get in there, like it is hard.
Nope, I trial and error, man. I fucked up my hair bad. Right for the first year, like I'd screw it up, and cuts and divots, all kinds of things. I'd throw in my hat, just wait for it to grow back, and I'd try it again and fuck it up, throw in my hat. I'd get made fun of all the time, but I played baseball in college, and the guys razz me all the time about what the fuck are you doing with your hair, man? Like, just throw in my hat and try it again.
See, I admire that because when quarantine happened and I was like, all right, so it's either you rock a mane or you try to go at it yourself. Like I gave up and I just shaved it. I mean, and I was wearing a
Yeah,
hat during the interviews and people were like, lose the hat, but it's like, yeah, but I'm bald. So I mean, I'm not used to that. So you have to admire someone that goes at it and figures out how to do it and sticks with
I'm
it.
persistent, man. Persistent. That's the way I was kind of raised, and that's why we've been successful. I've been successful kind of in this sport for 17 years. I got into it, I didn't know anyone. I just kind of fell in my lap. Had to learn it on my own, and no one helped me. The only guy that was around at that time was Alex Grunder, who was our wrestling coach at the time. Awesome dude, awesome coach, and we kind of just fucking figured it out on our own. You know what I mean? And so it's kind of the same thing, right? Like I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna try, and if I fuck up, I'm gonna try again until I get it right, and kind of take that approach with everything.
Exactly. You mentioned building up your name and stuff like that. How do you feel like your name is in the industry? Like there's certain training camps that people are always going to mention no matter what, whether they're successful or anything. But do you feel like you've finally reached a point where your name is being mentioned along with the elite camps and all that good stuff?
I don't know. You'd have to answer that question. Fans would have to answer that question. I mean,
Yeah.
um, not really looking for, like to go out of my way for notoriety. I mean, the athletes, we do our job as coaches, and hopefully the athletes are successful, and that's what matters at the end of the day. The athlete's hand raised is there's no amount of value you can put on your athlete's hand raised at the end of the day, especially at the highest levels. And um, I know that our athletes that are in the UFC, I was running numbers not too long ago, and we're something like 75 and 20 in the UFC and all of our athletes, Bellator athletes and stuff like that. So, that kind of speaks for itself. I mean, we've kind of I've had, teams of 50 before, several times, and I got rid of that shit. There's too many factions that happen. Too many guys and girls starting to think, well, why is this guy getting extra time? Why are they getting extra time, et cetera, et cetera. We cut it down, quite a bit substantially. And, we have 6 coaches. And in my opinion, I hate it when I hear fighters or other people say, we have the best coaches in the world. No, there's a lot of really good coaches out there, a lot. And I believe that we are collectively as a group, some of the best in the world. I'm not going to say the comment like we are the best, that's subjective. And, but I will say we have some of the best coaches at the highest level in the entire world. And I think our performances speak for themselves. If fans know me, if media knows me, you'd have to answer that question. That's based on what we've done and what we tried to accomplish and what we try to do. Uh, I would say we're very different in the aspect of real individual attention. With 6 coaches, guys can get individual attention whenever they want it, and so it's very different. You don't have a room of 50 people and they're all jockeying for position and this and that. No, when someone fights, the attention's on them. The focus, it's very different. Our system is unique in that way.
So on the show, I always like to talk a little bit about the media side of things. I think, people see like the media's perspective. Sometimes you don't really hear about the behind the scenes stuff, like how the coaches see it, how the fighters see it and stuff. But how would you say your relationship is with the media? Like, I know it's a little bit, because, you host a podcast with James, obviously, and everybody loves James in the media, but how would you say your relationship with the media is?
Well, I'd like to believe it's fine. um, I've never really had anyone say anything to me. I mean, I've been on, several of the ESPN shows and different things like that, and done many podcasts and interviews and things. I think everything is good. I don't have any problems that I know of. I'm sure there's people out there that hate me. I mean, it is what it is, right? No matter what, you're gonna have. If you're successful doing something, someone's gonna hate you. It's just is the way it is. It's just is the nature of the beast. Whether it's media, another team, and a fighter, whatever. It just is what it is, kind of thing. But I think I have a good relationship with the media.
I mean, are you enjoying it? Like, do you notice that your athletes enjoy it too? Because I think the biggest complaint I hear everybody say is like, you guys always ask the same shit every time. Like, even Poirier, I was listening to him on Joe Rogan, and he was like, they all ask the same shit. Like, it sounds like everybody has a real big issue with that.
Well, it's just like, man, if you're gonna have a let's have a conversation. Let's have a candid conversation. Let's just talk. Don't ask me, if you're the fighter, don't ask me about how my fucking weight is or how I feel or what do I think about my opponent. No, it's bullshit. Look, the answer is going to be, I'm fat as fuck. No, I'm not prepared. I've been watching cartoons the whole time. I'm not, it's like, just have a conversation with us. You know what I mean? With the athlete. And if it's a coach, have a conversation with him. Talk to him candidly. Just talk about shit, right? Like you're sitting around having a beer or a cup of coffee, like it's kind of like what we're doing now. And I think that's probably what a lot of them get annoyed at, or when they dig, right? Like they're trying to like dig and get you to like say some shit. It's like, man, I'm not saying anything, type of thing. But it's because it's like causing controversy, right? I mean, that's what media does. A lot of times they want to create a story, and I get it, but at the same time, it's annoying.
So sometimes I feel like they go a little bit too far trying to create a story. Like I saw a video today of Chael Sonnen where I think he had lost the title fight at Bellator, and then somebody out and somebody very notorious, but I don't want to say his name because But anyways, he asked him a question. He was like, how what would you say to your father right now if he saw you or something? It's like such a and I believe his father had passed away. it's like it's such an emotional question. Like you know exactly what you're trying to do with that one. I was like, I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
sure if that was the most appropriate setting for that.
right. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like, man, why even go there? You know what I mean? It's just like, just keep it candid, because a lot of times the coach or the fighter will give up information. If you just have a candid conversation with them and you just kind of, talk, they're probably going to be more at liberty to just to talk and speak freely and give it. But when you dig at them and you ask them questions, it's like, man, I'm kind of done.
Have you had those interviews like that where halfway through you're like, all right, I'm about to turn this shit off, or I'm gonna start, being dry. You know what I mean? Like sometimes the answers they go from really long to like one word answers. Like, have you had those moments before? Where you're thinking like, let's end this as soon as possible.
I mean, I haven't really personally for me, and even if I was annoyed, I just kind of went with it. But I know some of my fighters have for sure. Like I Aspen for one. Like I'm not going to say any names or anything like that as far as who they were media wise, but let's just put it this way: there's certain ones that she won't even talk to at this point. She's like, man, I'm done with that shit. I ain't doing that no more. But it happens to the fighters, I think, more than it does the coaches.
That's true. I'm seeing a big thing with coaches too. Is a lot of people they'll bring on coaches and won't talk to the coach about anything relating to them, and everything is about their most popular fighter, right? Like I always hear Javier Mendez. Everybody talks to him about Habib for like 30 minutes. No one has said a single thing about Javier. Sometimes, and I understand why it happens, but it would seem pretty crazy. Like, would you necessarily want to do that if, you're just talking about somebody else the entire time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of par for the course, right? I think the coaches probably, they're kind of known oftentimes by how you succeed in training your athlete and if they're successful. So I think it's kind of par for the course. But yeah, I mean, it does get a little bit like, is there anything else you want to ask, kind of thing.
So,
But
out of your fighters, like, who would you say is like the best at like sort of the interviews? Would it be like Max Griffin? Would that be like the guy that's the best at them?
yeah, Max is good. He likes being he's good on camera. He's good on the mic. You know, I'm trying to think. Andrea's pretty good. I mean, she's just goofy. Anthony's a freaking goofball too. Like Aspen's just she's Aspen's not bad, but I mean, as far as like, yeah, just like that true like I'm cool with being on camera and being behind a mic. I would say Max for sure.
So I am curious about one thing with Max. Is it felt like going into, I believe his last fight, I think that was against Ramiz. Like it
Yeah.
felt like mentally something was different about the fight. I mean, even both fighters, the way they were talking about it, you felt like there was maybe some underlying tension or something like that. Was there something different about that fight? Like it felt like maybe something was different about it.
Um, I- you know, there was so much kind of talk from the other side as far as not just the other side, but media too, like as far as like how good Ramiz's grappling is, and he's just going to grapple Max to death, and et cetera, et cetera. I think it just kind of Max got tired of hearing it, type of thing. Um, I don't want to say there was any bad blood per se, but it was just kind of those things like fucking tired of hearing this shit. Like I can grapple too if I want to. It's um, these guys are in the UFC. They're good at everything. They're good in all aspects, and it just really boils down to what the plan was and how and who sticks to that plan better. And then who can make adjustments in fight. The best. But yeah, there was a little bit of, I guess, animosity on the other side as far as that whole, because Ramiz is a decorated grappler, and so it was like, oh, Max is gonna get taken down, blah blah blah. It's the same kind of shit like people say about Aspen. Like everyone thinks that they're gonna go in there and grapple Aspen or they're gonna clinch with her, and it's like you guys don't fucking even realize how good someone like Aspen is and how strong that girl is. You lock up with her, you're gonna have a real different kind of take. It's the same thing with Max. Like Ramiz, there was a few times where they kind of got in that clinch scenario, and I think people quickly realized, man, fucking Max is really strong and real technical in these spots, uh, and it changes their mindset real quick. And we were prepared for, that, and so it turned out real well for Max.
And it's funny you do mention the grapplings. I did listen to, they both did a podcast, Top Turtle. Shout out to those guys, Daniel, all those guys. And the funny thing is when Max got to, the grappling part where they were talking a little bit about grappling, you felt like all of a sudden he kind of flipped the switch, right? He was like, oh, this guy thinks he's gonna come in here, fucking take me down and hump me for the whole fight. Like you did feel like there was a certain like, hell no, this ain't
Yeah,
happening. Like, why does everybody think this is gonna happen? Like I've been here too long. You did feel like there was some sense of anger about it. Like, really, you guys think he's gonna do this to me? Like it just that was something I had picked up,
Yeah,
before the fight.
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it was just I think he was just tired of hearing that shit. Like Max can grapple, man. If you go look at some of the stats, like Max is up there in like grappling exchanges, takedowns, takedown defense, all that kind of stuff. It's just each fight presents a different kind of challenge, right, and a different plan and a different path to victory. And a lot of time, and lately, a lot of the times hasn't our path to victory hasn't included a heavy grappling, right? But it doesn't mean we weren't prepared for it or overly concerned about it. One thing that we do a lot is whatever someone's good at, we respect it, but we also are prepared and feel we can go and beat you at it too, right? If we need to. So um, that's kind of one thing that we kind of hold that kind of that chip on our shoulder. Like, okay, great. Use Anthony for example. Like, yeah, great. We're fighting Rodolfo Vieira, the greatest probably jiu-jitsu guy on the planet in his prime, right? Like, did you think we weren't prepared? Did you think like we weren't gonna like assume that we might be in some of those positions that we were in? We planned for that for 3 fucking months. All those positions he was in, we knew we might be in those positions. But if we stayed calm, continued to move, continued to follow our progressions based on what jiu-jitsu is going to tell Rodolfo to do, and based on what we knew we needed to do to continue to make those grappling exchanges happen and continue to make Rodolfo use energy by trying to hold Anthony down, that there was not a surprise to us. It was a little bit of a surprise that he submitted him. We all thought as a team we were going to win by TKO in the second, but what's funny is that choke that Anthony does, if you aren't prepared for it, which most people aren't, you're going to defend the wrong way. And if you notice when Rodolfo was fighting, like he pushed on Anthony's knee, we all sat back. When Anthony went for it in the corner, we just all sat back and said, just leave him alone because we knew he was going to finish it. And as soon as we saw Rodolfo push on the knee, we knew he was fucked because he was defending incorrectly. So it's just like, yeah, we respect you as an athlete and who you are, right? And what your attributes are, but that's where it ends. Then we focus on us. I'm not focused on you anymore. Like, okay, yep, we know what you like to do. Cool. We know your tendencies. Now we're going to focus on us. And now you got to fight us. And we kind of hold that chip on our shoulder. Like, you'll come to the fight and tell us you're going to do this, that. We don't do that to you, and we're just prepared and we go out there and we perform that way.
That must have been such a great feeling, though, watching him get that submission. Like the entire talk all week, right, is how he's going to get submitted, blah blah, and all of a sudden, everybody flips the switch. Like, must have been such a great feeling just as a team to see that, and it's like, maybe we'll get people to shut up finally.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was fantastic. It was amazing. It's probably one of the bigger upsets in the eyes of the MMA community. I don't say maybe ever, but it's up there.
And so let's talk about Aspen a little bit. I know you posted a video of her running on Instagram. I believe you said she was doing really well physically and stuff like that. How exactly is the recovery going? I know you guys talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but when can we sort of, expect to see her fight again?
She's doing great. She's at PT probably right now as we speak. We'll be in Vegas this week, Thursday, Friday for some testing and some kind of a checkup. She'll fight this summer, probably August.
Must have been a pretty scary feeling with that kind of injury, right? Because you never know, like, is your athlete going to come back at 100%? Are they going to come back, better than before in some situations? Like, even for you guys as a team, that must have been kind of a scary thing to deal with.
Definitely for me, it was her last hard day of training. And normally I keep the rounds. We only spar once a week. And usually I keep the rounds at like 5, right? And I was like, man, everyone looks pretty good. I'm going to add another round, right? And I never do that. And a minute left in the last round, extra credit round that I did, it just blew out. And I still hold a lot of like fault to that. Like it's my fault that I let that round happen, et cetera, et cetera. But if there's anyone that's going to come back stronger, it's going to be Aspen. Like, I don't know. I can't say that I feel bad for any of the girls that she's about to fight, but I sure in hell wouldn't want to fight her.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how was that for you mentally? Because I'm sure you do put some of the blame on yourself, and it's not your fault, right? You didn't go out there with some scissors or anything trying to attack anybody, but mentally, it
No,
couldn't have been an easy situation either, especially with the kind of relationship you have with your athletes.
Yeah, that was brutal. That's the only word I could think of. Um, because I just think in my mind, I'm like, man, I never do an extra credit round like this. There was no reason for it, and I did it. And sure as shit, she got hurt, right? So I do take some blame for it because normally I never do that, and I decided to do that. So that was my fault, right, for kind of allowing that last round to happen. And yeah, that's what happens to happen. So yeah, not brutal. That's the best word I can say. Brutal.
All right, listen, before we officially wrap things up with the shout outs and stuff, because I'm sure you've got a ton of stuff you want to plug. But before that, what's a great 2021 look like for MMA Gold? Like, what's the ideal kind of scenario for you guys this year?
Um, my goal, if I was to create a goal for if we're talking about the UFC athletes or we're talking about the ones that are coming up, UFC athletes, I want to see all three of our the three guys that are in there, Jamal Emmers, Max Griffin, Anthony Hernandez, all enter the top 15. That would be a goal that I'd like to see happen. And then just Andrea Lee, Aspen, Marion to continue to climb the ranks um, and continue to do what they do. I mean, I don't really look too far ahead. I only look one fight at a time. But that would be a cool goal to achieve, to have every one of your athletes that are in the UFC all ranked in the top 15. Like I can't say that there's probably I don't know that there's a team out there that has every one of their athletes that are in the UFC that are ranked, right? Like I don't know, but I think that's a cool goal to try to achieve. And I think we can.
For sure, it's a very feasible goal. Very realistic. Listen, when we end this podcast, it's always about the guests. So I'm sure you have a ton of shout outs, right? You have a podcast, athletes, fights coming up, all that good stuff, social media. So anything you want to plug, all that stuff, the floor is yours.
Yeah, if you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Pacific, you want to get on the Victory Loves Company podcast, hear me talking shit with Chael Sonnen. It'll be a fun one. Shout out to all the coaches at MMA Gold, Jake Duangdara, our Muay Thai coach, Justin Durham, our wrestling coach, Mike Guy, our boxing coach, Nick Gonzalez, our kickboxing coach, Doug Casebeer, our strength conditioning coach, Elliot Kelly, our other grappling coach, all the athletes, everyone that supports MMA Gold. Just thank you guys. I can't thank you enough. My family, friends, all the athletes that I coach. Thank you for allowing me to coach you. Thank you for listening. Everyone that's involved, man. I couldn't. This doesn't happen without all those people and all the coaches and family and friends and everyone that supports it. It takes a village to be successful, and I'm very thankful for everyone.
All right, well, there we go. Well, listen, Jim, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And for anyone that made it here to the end, it's always good for the analytics to make it to the end. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.